Welcome pre-Chiro students to another meaningful and focused conversation on what the path to becoming a chiropractor could look like. We're checking in today with Dr. Jim Deegan out in Georgia, practicing chiropractor. Dr. Jim, can we just get started by you introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about what your background was before you became a chiropractor and what attracted you to becoming one?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ben. And I invite everyone, my name is Dr. Jim Deegan, but we invite you to just call us Ben and Jim, because that's the real heart of chiropractic. It's about people, seeing people. So Ben is up in the kind of northwest corner of the United States in the Bay Area, Oakland and California. I grew up in the other side, that kind of northeast corner of the United States, between Boston and New York, in one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, the Appalachian Mountains, or the Appalachian Mountains, in a small little town, in Western Massachusetts. A beautiful area to just grow up, and lots of nature and lakes around me. So that kind of set the stage for me just getting into chiropractic, where I hadn't even heard the word chiropractic ever really out loud until probably when I was about age 19. There was a little league coach, and he was a chiropractor, and he did baseball, but that's kind of all I had heard until about age 22, when I was a sophomore in my undergrad college. And I was in the biology program, so I had a real passion, and maybe just like some of you, just you're leaning into the sciences, and it's kind of taking you down a path. And so that took me down the sciences and biology. And I had a dear friend in there who was very clear that he was going to be a chiropractor. So again, I hear that for the second time. And then in one of my classes, I had a history of medicine class. Interestingly enough, third time, things come in threes, it seems for me, I hear the word chiropractic. And they actually had kind of dove into chiropractic and some of the history, even in this history of medicine class. So very interesting. And so, one summer, I also said, hey, I like the body. I like things natural. I like nature. Let me look at physical therapy. And so I went to a hospital, and I started looking around and started kind of cruising around for a couple of days and just get a sense of what was happening in the hospital environment. I wasn't comfortable in the hospital environment. It also had a lot of rules and things that you had to follow. And it didn't seem like that really kind of lit my heart. So I went to a chiropractor that my mom was seeing, and chiropractic at the time was a wonderful lady. But she just didn't have a passion for chiropractic. It just wasn't her calling. I believe that she had more of a heart for her family, and chiropractic was more of a profession instead of a vocation or a calling. But the second chiropractor I connected with, I walked into his office. People there were seen as people. People there were heard, and he had an excitement and enthusiasm, and he kind of took me under his wing. And that just lit a fuse for me. Only hearing the word chiropractic 3 times, but something inside me, with the passion of my friend who also wanted to become a chiropractor, said, I'm gonna lean into this. I'm gonna check it out, and applied to Life University. And as many chiropractic schools, it's very easy to get in, but to stay in, the program has a lot, and then to stay out means we get to immerse and actually come as brothers and sisters, so that unlike medicine or some other professions, sometimes it can be about competition. I invite you that the chiropractic, the real heart, is about inclusion, bringing people together. The first adjustment was done by a white man, a male, a Canadian man, to a black gentleman, Midwestern gentleman. Right there, we see inclusion, not exclusion.
And I really would love for you to clearly differentiate for the prospective student the difference between seeing people as patients and seeing people as people. and what your love for people has really allowed you to explore within your practice as being a chiropractor, the diversity of human expression, and what it's like to be a chiropractor working with a wide variety of other people.
Man, thank you so much, Ben. In my small hometown, I was on a little street and I had a second grandmother, if you will. She was in her 80s. And I would go to her house and I would just sit and I would listen to stories, listen how she grew up. That started to kind of lean in and pull at my heartstrings that sometimes those that are older in this culture in America tend to have been forgotten. But as I sat at her feet and I would listen, something was stirring in my heart to lean in, not only to hear of stories that had happened in her past, but also to see what was in the present happening with her ailments, her things. I had a desire to almost help her in whatever way I could. And the first way was to just listen to her. And thankfully, I had a lot of people around me that would see me as a person and not just treat me as like a younger person to talk down to. So that was one thing that really stirred my heart. And along the way, the people that I've met have really breathed into me in a real authentic way. And man, that makes so much difference, you know? Isn't that true? Like if you're seen and somebody calls you by name, it's so different than if you're like a name tag with a number on it, right? So that started stirring the pot within me about, and then my mentor and your mentor as well, Ben, and others like you, with Arnaud Bernier, had that same heart to say to us who you are as a human being precedes, or another way to say that is who you are as a chiropractor. So it's like, okay, let's see people for people. And then let's like listen to their story and start to relate to them. Oftentimes professions, sometimes in an act to become more professional, they put up a wall or a divide. In chiropractic, it started as a very real way, as one gentleman, one person. It happened to be a white Canadian person with a black gentleman. I say that because the culture at the time, there was a divide. There was, this is social classes. All of that was broken down to a heart of a man serving another man, a human being. And, you know, I stepped into that field, and we're all kind of stepping into that, whether we realize it or not. And as my brother Wade put here, and it's almost like a pool. It's just yummy. It just seems to create this yumminess or a delicious invitation to more. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's new for some people, you know? Mm-hmm. Sometimes seeing people as human means that we also have to be seen. Mm-hmm. And we're not always comfortable with that. So just take a little baby step, just listen and breathe and just take that in. And so for me, it seemed to happen very naturally. Maybe that's because we had animals. I had other female role models, my neighbor who was like a grandmother, my grandmother, and I was also raised by my mom because my father had passed away at about age 15, which was another tug at my heartstrings that said, how come he died of cancer? What is health? What is vitality? What is this will to live? And that caused me to lean into a health profession that in chiropractic is more than health. It's about your life and living. So I hope that gets a little bit of, you know, there's more to that conversation, but you get.
Can you talk about the metamorphosis that you went through of maybe unlearning some of the belief systems that you had maybe been indoctrinated into growing up in a culture and a society that orients us to human health in a way that is much more reactive than preventative or even proactive, or even seeing the connection between maybe a body signal and how we're feeling and what's going on in our life. And Obviously, as a chiropractor, you really do have to go through some challenging times, not only the academic portion, but also looking within and seeing some of the harsh realities that, maybe you have areas or aspects of you that you need to let go of, or that you need to make peace with so that you can show up for people 100%. Can you talk about what your process was like?
Wow, there's so much meat to that question. It's so good. Um, I will start with, in my small hometown, there was a small health food store that started from what I had mentioned with my dad. What is health? What is symptoms? How do people get quote unquote sick? What is the process that's happening? So as I walked into the health food store, I saw that there was new conversations happening. There was a new awareness of taking care of the body, being proactive versus literally 3 blocks down was a hospital. And that's a different conversation. And I mentioned that I looked into physical therapy, and in that hospital, there are different conversations about the body being scary, being almost afraid of it, and how to manage it. But there was people in the health food store that were talking about ways to start taking care of the body. And I'm not talking about chiropractic. I'm just saying nutrition and food. And then adding to that, what about if we take less medication? What if we could start to exercise and get out in nature? So that started to change my whole perspective on the way I'd grown up, which was very similar, just taking different medications if there was symptoms, and treating the body and almost being a bit afraid of the body and afraid to go to the doctor. Um, and so when I came to Life University in 1994, I was in a very unhealthy relationship, and a series of events landed me to experience that very thought. I landed in the hospital with the virus attacking my heart in intensive care. And in that process, I'm very clear that there was a supernatural, God, whatever you want to call it, uh, healing that happened in the supernatural, but in the natural realm, a series of questions. As the doctor said, your heart is back to normal. Your heart has been healed. I was so grateful, but I was taking medication, and now this conversation was coming up, saying, "Wait a second. If my heart is doing well, why am I taking these medications? It doesn't make sense." And when I heard the conversations from the health food store of things I could do to support the healing of my body, now I can start to do things to not rely on chemicals, but to now. So chiropractic, the philosophy, I thought it was just going to be an easy A of philosophy. We're just going to talk about philosophy and we're just going to talk about life. But experientially, it was like, wait a second, this is a new lens to see the world through. And not just throwing medication away and being reckless, but actually getting adjusted to clear my nerve system that controls every system in the body, incorporating the natural laws with nutrition, with water, with sunlight. The very things that we're finding out are actually building the body. We refer to this as more vitalism, or there's something more than chemistry, physics, and biology happening here. And I was breathing life into that and experiencing it for myself and getting off medication and beginning to be very proactive, very intentional, and watching how my body was healing, growing, and thriving. And so I was actually experiencing it and doing it. And so these shifts became not just the lens, not just the philosophy, but actually what BJ Palmer and D-Day, the developer and the founder of chiropractic, they were living, they were playing with these. I think D.D. Palmer was like eating a quart of honey a day, which is a little dicey and a little on the other side, but he was playing with, what's happening in life and trying to find that balance. And so for me, actually experiencing, actually not being reckless, but very intentional and incorporating the laws of nature, getting clear my nerve system, which is like the DSL cable of life, between the brain and every cell in the body, and getting everything working together as a team. So experientially that happened for me, but there was a shift that happened slowly over time and in today's society, chiropractors have been saying for years, we don't just treat symptoms. We're actually, it's like the language of the body. We're listening to these symptoms as a conversation. So instead of numbing our senses, we're trying to make sense of it. So that kind of may start to shed some light to, okay, this is not a reckless, radical philosophy. This is an observation of what's already happening. And we're almost getting in flow of what's happening in life instead of counter current flowing upstream. And the culture is waking up to that.
When you mention the flow of life, you're acknowledging the supernatural as you mentioned it. There's the natural way of seeing the world, and observing nature is super important. And then there's the spiritual side of life. There's the things that can't be explained, like spontaneous healing and remissions that take place for people that have terminal illness who survive from those illnesses because they don't buy into the labeling, and they have a deeper power within that they're tapping into. Can you speak to not only what vitalism lends to the supernatural, but also being a chiropractor who acknowledges that in their practice and everything going on in the world? How do you remain connected to that, and why is it so important for chiropractors to remain connected to that as opposed to the external influences?
Well, Ben, that's so great, because the spine may just look like a spine, but it's actually the original stringed instrument of life. It can be a guitar, it can be the cello, it can be the violin where we play it. And yet it seems like you just have bones. There's a nerve network inside of there that is also carrying the information, or the vital information of life. So that sets it different. Our quantum physics people are sharing with us that these bones aren't static, but they're actually vibrating at different frequencies of light and at the same octave scale as the piano. So the lens of vitalism is there's more than what meets the eye. This is also a backpack of life, if you will, that people are carrying within them and on them, almost like the past that's behind us. It's the rear view mirror, and they don't even realize it. Now, Louise Hayes and some other people have put some language to that to expand that conversation, that the dorsal part of the spine is almost the doorway of the treasure chest of emotions. And it's been said out loud that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And you're going to learn that these cranial nerves, they're these nerves that plug right into the brain, go right into the brain spinal cord. That is the driver of the car. So clearly there's so much more happening within the spine, the nerve system, and life around us. And so that's if we're going to look through the microscope. And in school, it's almost like you pop the trunk or pop the hood of the car and you look into the engine. There's a lot happening more inside there. And if we look through the telescope around us, we see, wow, there's some similarities here. The planets, I have some pictures too, that where the eye looks like the sun. The lens, all these things have. So our philosophy of vitalism shows that there's more interconnected than we realize. There's more space and energy. It's been said that energy is everything and everything is energy. And if you look down at the microscopic level, you don't just see bones, you see molecules and things moving, but you see a lot of space. So it just starts to beg the question, there's more. There's more than what we can explain. And so when you start to see spontaneous remission and healing and things happening, there's more possibility. There's more than what's exciting is life is happening. Life in the body is for you. It logically makes sense that if the body was not trying to survive and trying to kill itself, we'd be dead already. So isn't that the flame that we stoke, right? That the body and life is happening and we get into that flow. So the exciting part of vitalism is that it's not just pieces and parts. It's alive and dynamic and changing. And it's been said that hope is sometimes the best of things, maybe the only thing for some people. And if you can hang on to that, to know that life is working for you, it's been designed to flow and to work, and almost like an inner autopilot or a cruise control, and you can get and tap into that. And that's exciting, and it's hopeful. It's hopeful. And for some people, that's the last string that they're holding on to. And so I take that very seriously. It's sacred. And so this lens lets us say, man, there's more happening here, and you've got more possibilities, and who you are as a human being is becoming. It's like there's more. And otherwise it's easy to just go through our normal day and activities and feel like we're almost like asleep at the wheel until we sort of drift and hit the guardrail and wake us up. Sometimes that may be the wake up that we need, that there's a philosophy, a way of seeing, a lens, that there's more than just the pieces and parts and just this automobile driving along and cruise control, and we're falling asleep at the wheel. So it's exciting, that conversation, and it's new for people, but it's an invitation. See, this is not like, this is our way or the highway. It's like, wait a minute, lean in, listen to this, and something may stir within inside of you that, So.
Wow, thank you so much for really shifting the consciousness of the viewer. There's so much to unpack with what you just shared. I believe that there was multiple lessons that people could go and really, if we just cut it up. But dialoguing with the body and learning to listen, can you describe, I like to think of pre-Chiro in this project as kind of opening Pandora's box to expose people to what's possible down this path, to expose people to what they can go and explore for themselves if they choose to. Can you kind of describe what your exposures were that shaped the way that you developed into who you've become, and then also reflect on, when you have that consciousness in practice, what are some of the experiences that you've been able to enjoy? Obviously just touching on a few, because I'm sure there's many, but when you come from that place, that I would like you to reflect on, how'd you get to the place that you're at right now? Because I'm sure it took a lot of work, and maybe we can speak about the parallel curriculum that you created for yourself outside of the traditional sense. But can you just kind of touch on some of what I just shared?
Yeah, it started with having a lot of female role models that really spoke into, you can still hear me, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Female role models that were strong, and traditionally in different societies were the real healers, and we're seeing that more in chiropractic. More females are entering chiropractic, which is so exciting. So that stirred my heart and softened my heart. The people that I met and the experience that I had, a near life experience, if you will, right? Choosing life instead of teetering on death, really was that wake up call of kind of at the wheel and hitting. Now we're reconnecting, which is really about chiropractic too, right? It's Bluetooth moment, searching, connected. So we're back. The female role models, my experience in the hospital, really blowing open my heart. So many people can go through life almost kind of numb. In school, I mentioned with the health food store, the people that I meet there, all of a sudden you start to become on conversations that you never would have thought before. Chiropractic was the same way. Once I was on this trajectory of, the body's healing itself, what can I do to feed that flame? I meet Arnaud Bernier. I meet other precious people that step into my life and start working that heart muscle, almost like, working out. So how do we do that? It means we have to watch what we're watching with movies, the people that were around. When I came down here, I mentioned I was in a really toxic relationship. So I craved healthy relationships, fun relationships, laughter. I met some really amazing people. and I met people that were living it. And so I started living it. So it became very easy for me to connect with those people. Now, in the chiropractic curriculum, you'll find that it does not support life. It's almost studying a lot with what's wrong with the body. And so I was really craving a conversation that was more on what's right with the human body, what's right with me. Because in life, you know, it feels good when people tell you what you're doing right. I love it. So I met these wonderful people, and Arnaud Bernier had a real heart to create MLS, or at the time it was called Making Love to the Spine, just a way of, from his background and upbringing that had a lot of pain and suffering, he transformed that into life and living and a heart for people. And I connected immediately with that. And so many others in chiropractic that have a desire for people, I started connecting with and started what we call a parallel curriculum, which means if you're jogging, isn't it fun to jog with someone right next to you? And if we'll come alongside someone, and if we'll come alongside a curriculum that is going one way, and we think of it as a path that if that conversation is only about death or darkness and something that's wrong with the body versus a path that's more light and life and vibrant, we've got to create that that parallel run. Otherwise, we become drained, and school can feel very draining. So this parallel curriculum of studying life, health, healing, and we say wellness, but it's more correct to say well-being because it's more about your whole being. That health is one aspect of that being. So a parallel curriculum is to just keep taking in things that are building the body, life and health and studying natural laws. And so the people that I met really shaped that conversation. And in school, it's very important in chiropractic school to study that, because that is the heart and soul of what we do, is we're shifting the conversation in the public to what is right within you. And we're gonna, and you know what's so cool? It's tapping an unseen potential that they don't even know they had, you didn't know they had, and we're just releasing it. And guess what? We're doing it together, and it's such an adventure to unpack that. So in school, it's very important, because in life, if someone talks down to you, if someone is belittling you and constantly pushing you down, you know how that feels. The curriculum can feel the same way. There's a movie, Too Fast, Too Furious, and the speeding cars and the racing cars creates a smoke screen, and school can feel like a smoke screen of confusion. A parallel curriculum is to clear that, to come alongside of you, doctors like myself and Ben, Dr. Wade and Arnaud and other precious people, to say, okay, it's a lot happening, but here's what's happening, and here's life happening. And so today we see, and thank you, Ben, for podcasts, because back in our day of just the lineage, I was learning from from Arnaud Bernier. We don't say doctor, we say Arnaud because he's a human. And so we connect. And so learning at his feet, instead of us being able to fly all over the world, right now you and I can use technology to connect whoever's listening to this, to just come in on this conversation. And so technology is a beautiful thing. And so thank you for bringing that technology so that people can sit in the comfort of their home and just lean in and say, is there something more here in chiropractic for me? And so I was hearing it directly in the clubs, and there were some amazing clubs with MLS and BGI and all these different people that are studying life and living from a place of vitalism that we call. There's so much more. But today podcasts and today listening to these things will start to fill you up or fill your cup so you don't feel drained. And that is very, very important in life and in chiropractic, in anything. And so being directly with those around me, living it out, having experience, and then sharing these conversations so that we can share with the public. because it really is just an invitation for more. And it's not like you can take it or leave it, but at some point, BJ Palmer said the skull is only a 1/4 inch of skull, but sometimes it may take like a decade or more to go through just a 1/4 inch of skull. And we're all like that. You know, we're all like that. It might take a little bit of time to come in, but at least a seed or at least a little drilling may start to get in. So surround yourself with people that are going to infuse that philosophy. Otherwise, you can get that philosophy anywhere in life about what's wrong with the body, how life is just on drugs, or just, you know, what's the body betrayed me again is sometimes a conversation. Man, but we're infusing the possibilities. So the podcast is a great way, and I've gone through and seen some of the precious people that you have interviewed. What a great way to just connect with their hearts and see their passion. And so even with the people, then BJ Palmer and Dee wrote stuff down. They wrote these green books, was almost like a diary of their thoughts. So that was another way to connect. But I think the real way today is just live and in person and podcasts around the world, and then using technology until we have FaceTime, until we meet face to face. Because one day I'm going to give you a hug in person, Ben. It's great. It's great.
I want to thank you for your dedication to the path of mastery. I know that you're on this path. You haven't arrived anywhere. You continue to learn. You continue to grow. And you've mentioned the natural laws of the universe many times. And I'm wondering if you can just dive into that for the students to really explore what you mean when you say the natural laws.
Yes, it's happening all around us. I grew up in a small town, and so I had time to look out, you know, as other people have mentioned, into nature and explore nature. And you get to see the cycles of nature. You know, you get to see what's happening, and then you start to see, like I mentioned, through the telescope or the microscope, looking down inside the body. We're looking out into nature, these laws that are happening constantly. Like right now in Georgia, near Atlanta, right now the trees have these little buds, and they're starting. So we're going into springtime, and that bud is starting to become a little bigger, a little bigger. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's happening little by little. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to see the trees have these beautiful leaves. And in the fall, I see these trees, almost like the bronchial tree in the body, similarities, And in the fall time, these leaves will be shedding, just like the mucus layer of the lungs will be shedding and preparing for new. We're now preparing for the new season, which is springtime here. And if we look at that, it's like, well, what is governing that? Like, I'm not telling the tree what to do. It's right outside my window. And I'm not like constantly texting and emailing the tree and saying, hey, you know what? Go a little bigger today. Take that seed, take that pollen and grow. It's happening automatically. What's happening there? I'm observing natural laws right there and right then. The lunar cycle, we start to see the moon. Now, there was an eclipse a couple of years ago, and I went to the Georgia coast. And when the eclipse was happening, I got in the water. And I got in the water because my daughter was like, yeah, Daddy, let's go play in the water. But what I noticed was there was a different shifting of the tides. There was a different feel with that eclipse. Very interesting. Can't deny it because I experienced it and I'm witnessing it. What is it that makes a human being, when two people come together and you have one cell, mom and dad, and you have the union of cells, then it becomes 2 cells, 4 cells, 6 cells, 8 quadrillion cells. What is it that continues to make all the cells work together as a team? So these natural laws are happening all around us. There's the push and pull of the tide. The sun is pushing, the moon is pulling. And we get to see these if we'll stop and push pause sometimes, because isn't life super busy? But if we'll pause and we'll breathe, and this is a funny one to say sometimes, when you see the stop sign, stop and do what the fine print says and breathe and take it in. And so when I witness what's happening in nature, and it's happening all around us, and I now see birds coming back from Florida. So we're neighbors with Florida. So we see all these birds coming back, and they're landing on my front area, and they're getting food and nourishment. They're heading a little bit more north. What is it that's telling them to do that? I didn't text them. They didn't get the cell phone tower, right? They didn't get my text message. What is happening? So if we're honest and if we're observing, we can see that. But sometimes driving in our metal coffins, if you will, on the freeway, the life can almost like be asleep at the wheel until we hit the guardrail, or just a moment that captures your heart, being in nature, or a loved one, or a birth, or a death, or music, or nature. All these ways are ways that start to open the heart, tug at the heartstring, and really witness these natural laws. Now, for me with the healing, I understood that conceptually, but then I was applying it and saying, okay, if my body's for me, as my friend Matt here in Atlanta says, maybe we can be for it. Maybe I can get in sync with these natural laws. It's already happening on autopilot, on cruise control, on something outside of my control. And so it's fun but it's not only fun, it's essential, because for me, my body grew and developed. And they said in the medical arena that I had less than 1% chance of ever getting a heart that was working. They wanted to put me on the heart transplant list. They wanted to give me a pacemaker. Something inside said no. Not recklessly, but following the flow of natural laws was not just conception anymore. It was living it out and doing it. So I have experienced healing that's happening. There are many other people in our profession and around the world that you can see that have also experienced that healing when we're in sync with these natural laws. And it's exciting. Sometimes it's not even a conversation in regular life. So that's what's exciting in life, and Life University West and Life University East. As the name suggests, there's something bigger. It could have been called back pain, could have been called Dr. Sid, it could have been called, Oakland Chiropractic. Why life? Because there's something bigger. Something bigger runs the show, which means there's intelligence, there's universal laws that are happening. And if we'll get quiet, if we'll actually spend some time in nature, we can witness that. Now, it's very conceptual or in your head if all you do is read in textbooks. And so nature is one way. For some people, my friend in California, he loves surfing. He took me surfing. That's another way to experience life and the marine life. And even in this time of the pandemic and COVID and all that, the animal life has come back. Like they found in Italy, the streams and the rivers are now bustling with the sea life. And if you look in the national parks, you'll see the animals are kind of peeking out. Like who's the virus? Maybe who are the humans? Maybe have overcome certain avenues of life instead of sharing and enjoying natural laws. So spending time in nature, these natural laws, and even just hearing myself, my story.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but some of the laws that come to mind for me is like the law of polarity, which you've mentioned, the law of cellular replacement of supply and demand. If you could just maybe touch on those, just because I'm really enjoying, obviously, gravitational law. I'm really enjoying hearing you reflect on some of them.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Ben, because sometimes passion will lead me to just continue to go. So the law of polarity, the law of opposites, right? Day and night, male and female. In the body, there's arteries and veins. There's contraction of the muscle of the heart, and there's a relaxing part of the muscle. There is the birth process that's happening where there's a contraction and relaxing. There's the push-pull of the sun, and the sun will push and the moon has a pull. The law of cellular replacement is new cells being born. That's what healing is happening. That's all it is. And isn't that amazing that a new cell, right, every 11 months we get new soft tissues. So we get a new chance to kind of feed the body with more natural laws of water, fresh air, real food versus factory food or jar box or can. So that's one aspect. And then the hard tissues, maybe a year and a half. So that's exciting that the law of cellular replacement, that old cells die and new cells are being replaced. Now, very interesting, medicine will go after the old cells. And it's almost like an airplane that's circling and circling. It's a holding pattern. They're going to go after and treat after the sick cells. Chiropractic says, let it die, let it die, let it die. Let's breathe life into the new cells. Let's let those new cells populate. Let's let a whole new body start to emerge. What happened in my heart, what's happened in our mentor, Arnaud Bernier, had bone, necrotic bone that was dying, and then applying natural laws and this law of cellular replication, now new cells are being born. Isn't that hope for a person that may be in the hospital or sick cancer cells? That's a process. Let that go down and let's breathe life into new cells. There's a law of supply and demand. So in the body, there is a natural flow of energy. Chiropractic, or if you break down the word chiropractic, practic done by hand to release the chi or the energy of the body, or if you want to say human electricity, prana, chi, whatever you want to call it, something is flowing to make all the cells work together as a team, right? What happens when when that life force has left the body, the cells no longer work together as a team, they disperse. And then the natural laws of destruction, or the laws that govern and break down cells into new, smaller parts into the cycle of life of things breaking down into the soil, and then the soil creating a seed, creating a plant, creating a tree, so on and so forth. So supply and demand means that the life force will go to where it's needed most. The supply will go where it's needed most. As those cells are becoming new, there's a demand for those areas. Isn't that interesting? And isn't that wonderful and exciting to have hope that my body is working for me? I'm going to breathe life, and I'm going to infuse and use these natural laws that, okay, so we all drive an automatic car. All you have to do is, when it's in drive, take your foot off the brake and it's already in motion. That's what the body's doing. That's this inner wisdom of the body, the inner know-how. So, okay, so that's supply and demand. I mean, on and on it can go. Yeah.
You mentioned expansion and contraction. We're talking about gravity. A lot of chiropractors think of alignment, and I wonder if you could talk about physical alignment and then maybe also spiritual alignment, and how that shows up for you personally, but also for the people that you work with.
Yeah, nothing in the human body is symmetrical. All we have to do is, in nature, we look at the trees, nothing falls into the laws of symmetry and geometry, which is a man-made law for building buildings and structures. So it's the law of infinite variety. And so in the body, there's no such thing as perfect alignment. The spine has a natural contour or a natural tuning, if you will. Just like a musician would tune any stringed instrument. It's the original stringed instrument, tuning a piano, a guitar, and so forth. So we learn to use these bones almost like tuning pegs of a guitar to fine tune, versus perfect structural alignment, almost like RoboCop or just stiff. So we don't, all we have to do is look at nature, and it shows us that nothing is perfectly in alignment. But there is a natural opening of this tube or neural canal for the spinal cord, which now becomes a quickening between the brain and all the rest of the body to start to stir something happening in the body and start to connect with ways in the body that you didn't experience before. I mentioned before that this is almost like a backpack of life too, that people carry. Yeah, that's in there. People know that. They're like, oh, I'm shouldering a lot of stuff. It's kind of common sense. Like, yeah, and you're holding it in your shoulders. And we start to see that. And we see the eyes that are windows of the soul. And really, as chiropractors, we are going for the driver of the car, that person inside. They're not just bones, they're not just nerves, a human being and what's happening. And when we look eye to eye, now, when you look in the mirror, sometimes we're quick to shave and go past it. My brother Wade Port here in Atlanta, we teach MLS together, reminds us, let's look in the mirror and sometimes stare into our eyes and gaze into your soul. Sometimes we don't want to do that because it seems like, oh, that's weird. Listen, you're more than the pieces and parts. You're a human being inside. And so there's more there. And when we start to incorporate and start to see and start to feel, we feel that through an open heart. It means that the brain has about 1,000 times more electrically charged, 100 times more electrical charged. The heart is more 5,000 times stronger for electromagnetically. So we're drawn to more that's happening inside the body. So as we start to see people as just pieces and parts, we start to see more that's happening and the natural laws that's happening around us, and we're incorporating that. But that doesn't happen with just an academic mind or a left brain. So we're actually kind of engaging more of the right brain, what's happening in nature and artistry, so that we get to see more of a whole picture. Does that start to kind of touch on that, Ben?
100%. And we're in the deep end with you now. We're deep into study, and I think that this is really relevant to current chiropractors, practicing chiropractic students, and I'm really grateful to be able to share this with prospective students. So what's your vision for humanity as we kind of bring this thing to an apex? What is possible with a consciousness like this being carried forward to the next generation? I know that you're teaching, so that's near and dear to your heart. What's your greatest vision for humanity, or for the legacy and impact that you wish to leave here, or that you reflect that you've already left here on your time spent?
Well, you know, it's in the word. Humanity is humanity. So this idea, this intention, this focus on being humane with, and it's needed more so than ever, Ben. In a time where polarity, the law of opposites is happening, right? Violence and, you know, viruses and all the rest of it. But what's also happening is that there's more and more inspiration happening. There's more people. And chiropractic started with an inspiration of one man to serve another. And all of a sudden, D.D. Palmer, the founder of chiropractic, he said at one point that we're uniting man the spiritual with man the physical. That didn't just happen from him. It happened by him immersing himself in a connection with another human being and seeing that there was more possible. And I too come on board with direct lineage from Arnaud Bernier and other people that have come direct lineage, and your direct lineage too, Ben, as we're speaking into the next generation to share this message of hope and of joy of living and possibilities that humanity can be humane, and we can go back to the animals actually starting to enjoy our presence instead of almost peeking out, you know, as people have been quarantined. It was almost like there's an excitement in the animal kingdom, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be that we all have joy. I get teared up because there's more. There's more for humanity. And I am on board with seeing more joy, more laughter, more hugs, more intention of a better life, a better planet for all. And if that excites you, just lean into that conversation, because in chiropractic, we are brotherhood and sisterhood, and we're going to embrace you, and we're going to welcome you to ask so many questions and see if it's a right fit for you. But my vision is just like the heart of Didi that went into his son BJ and his wife Mabel and into the people that poured into Arnaud Bernier, who is my mentor, and has poured into my heart, and I'm pouring into the student's heart. And maybe that's an invitation for you, but there's an invitation for more, for a better world, and for a better cosmos and around us. And maybe the animal kingdom is picking up on that.
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. The whole interview was exploration, and it's just an honor to connect with you on this early Sunday morning, and just be dedicated to continuing to shine a light for people, because these are universal truths. These are things that people will come to as their truth if they're able to connect into this, and to be able to proactively reach out and try and put this in front of young people. I think that it's going to resonate. I think that people are going to recognize that chiropractic is much more than they thought it was. And this pathway, it doesn't serve anybody to stumble into this without truly knowing the bigness of it, the depths of it. And so I want to thank you for taking us there this morning, because this is really important work to plant these seeds early on, and witness what's possible when people have been given a direct message, a direct download from the original chiropractic root. And that's what's possible. Like with being a chiropractor, I've witnessed a lot of what you said, and I hold that in my heart when I work with people, and it just makes it so much more fulfilling, and it's left a lasting purpose where I don't have to be in my office to be out in the community connecting with people, trying to help them adapt better to their environment, trying to help them see that they need to have more faith in themselves than fear of what's out there and what's being sort of promoted, and hypnotizing their family members and friends to influence them and pressure them to live in a way that might not feel directly right. So anyway, I just want to thank you, Jim. Appreciate you, my friend, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really great.
Ben, thank you so